All right. Adam Daniel, welcome to the Rachel Holmes podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Rachel. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
It is great to see you because we have been doing endless amounts of chatting on Clubhouse. And if you've not got the Clubhouse app or you're not on Clubhouse yet, you are missing a treat if you're in the fitness industry. Let's quickly talk about Clubhouse. Adam, what motivated you first to get on Clubhouse and why do you love it so much?
My Clubhouse story is a bit random and
Go, I love your random stories.
and a bit of a mistake, if I'm honest. So I've only been on Clubhouse about 5 or 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks, and I had never heard of Clubhouse on this particular day. It was a Tuesday. I can tell you that for a fact. It was a Tuesday, and I saw obviously Matt Gleed, who you know, and Matt Gleed had posted up on Instagram stories. Anyone else in Clubhouse? I was like, oh, what's this Clubhouse? I need to check it out later. And then I saw Pete Combs on Clubhouse, who's a good friend of mine. I was like, it's all in like an hour. And then someone who I've been doing some work with, a guy called Ken Pointer, who's like a YouTube amazing guru type person, sent me an invite. We actually just messaged me on WhatsApp and said, hey, Adam, Clubhouse, do you want an invite? And I was like, I only heard about this an hour ago. Yeah, okay. And so I got the invite and obviously went on there or downloaded the app and then hadn't looked at it. And it was about 6, 7 o'clock on that Tuesday night. I just thought, oh, let's go on this Clubhouse, see what it's all about. And the first thing that popped up was Matt and Pete had started a room together. So I went into that room to see what it was all about. And it was just the two of them. And then we're just chatting away, the three of us. And Pete went, let's do a room together tomorrow night. And we went, okay, yeah, let's do a room together tomorrow night. So the room that you were a guest on last week, which is now called Fitness Insiders, actually started with Pete, myself, and Matt. And it happened purely by chance, completely random. And it was just Pete saying, let's let the three of us do a room together. And that's how I started my journey on Clubhouse.
And that is, and I've been listening to your rooms since then. And I love jumping in your rooms because you've got the best stories, the most random stories I think I've ever heard. And we might touch on a few of those. Okay. But over the years, you and I have crossed paths at various intersections in the fitness industry. And it's just great to get to know you a little bit better and find out your story. And we've been doing some rooms together, which has been wonderful. I've loved it. So let's take it all the way back, as you always have to do on a podcast, Adam. Start from the beginning. How did you get into the fitness industry and why? And let's have a few random stories.
Okay, so my story is probably like a lot of people out there. I guess the why was a little bit less specific back then. So I've been in the industry now, well, fitness industry now 24 years, must be, about 24 years. So I left school and I was very full. I went to a very good school and all my friends went to university. And I got into university, I got into good unis with my sport, and I decided not to go. I decided that, you know what, I got into sports science at Loughborough and various places. And I was like, I don't want to work in a lab. I don't want to do science. I don't want to do stuff that doesn't inspire me. All my friends have gone into banking and finance and stuff like that. Uh-huh. And I made a decision that, you know what, uni wasn't for me. I was the only person from my school that didn't go to uni that year. And my parents were like, that's great. Just do whatever makes you happy. I remember that. So, and they're like, if you want to go and be a bin man, as long as you're happy, go and be a bin man. And that's what my parents supported me, which was brilliant. And they then supported me when I said, okay, you know what I want to do? I want to work in a gym. I said, I don't really know what it's going to be like, because obviously 24 odd years ago, gyms didn't really exist. And the ones that did were a bit random and they had no structure and there's no career path. That was for sure back then. And I said, I want to work in a gym. I love training. I've been in sport all my life. I played rugby from 5. I'd run for England. I was playing rugby to a high level, all this stuff. So sport was very much me. And I just knew that I wanted to be somehow involved in sport. Yet sports science and university wasn't me. So they very kindly paid for me to do my level 2 and 3 back then, which again looks very, very different to what it is today. And I got my first job in an independent gym called Bromley Health Lido, which
I know Bromley Lido. No way.
Yeah, there you go. So it's now where the Virgin is in Bromley.
Yes, of course. Yeah. My friend Kathy Pierce worked there for years. She was.
I remember Kathy Pierce.
Yeah.
Kathy Pierce. There you go.
Oh my God, the Lido is a legendary place. It's really? Legendary. Yeah. God, so many stories about that place.
I do remember the group X there was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. Unbelievable. I was this like 18, 19-year-old boy who sort of started my first career there. So the owner was a guy called Terry, I forget his surname, really bad.
Yeah,
Terry,
that's right. Yeah.
who'd been he was a fantastic guy. He'd been an acrobat in Barnum. And he then got into he became a bit of an entrepreneur. He had property, commercial, residential property, and various things. He bought this Lido, and the outdoor pool he'd closed down for many years. The gym itself, though, back then you only had local leisure centres and this private gym. So I was working there at 18, 19 years old. I remember going for the interview. I was playing rugby to sort of, back then, the equivalent of pro, where you didn't really get paid. And I said to him, it's my first ever job interview. He said to me at the end, have you got any questions? I said, yeah, I can't work Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, or Saturdays. Isn't that okay? And he went, why is that? I said, well, my rugby. And he went, okay, as long as you work all day Sunday from 7 till 7, it's a deal. And I went, okay, that's done. So that was kind of my first job interview that I negotiated, and my first job. And he was fantastic. So he basically said to me, I'm going to teach you everything there is to know about a gym. So the Bromley Lido had swimming pool, it had gym, obviously 2 studios, it had a beauty side to it as well. So I learned reception, I learned how to run a beauty reception, I learned how to clean the bottom of a swimming pool, I learned how to scrub the lime scale out of the tile on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. I learned gym inductions, I learned the cafe. The only thing I didn't really do was Group X. I taught spin. I taught spin for many years there, and I used to have some brilliant classes. Never really got into the Group X side of things, but there was amazing people like Kathy Pierce. Yeah. There's one woman called Debbie Fisher there.
Debbie Fisher, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And they were brilliant. The energy they brought to it, to the whole building, was amazing. And they would have full classes. And Terry, at the time, was 60 odd. He would still teach classes. And what I found amazing when I reflect on the back is that some of the stuff he was doing 20 or over 20 years ago is now very trendy now. So he had this little area, and it was a circus skills area. So he'll do circus classes, teach people how to do handstands. He taught me how to do walking handstands. So you think now Instagram is full of handstand push-up, walking handstands. He was teaching me that 24 years ago when it wasn't trendy. He had a tightrope walk. So you think slack lining. He was teaching that 20 odd years ago. So he was ahead of the curve, that's for sure. Really so Bromley Lido, brilliant, learned loads about the industry. Moved on to there into to Otium, which was the chain of gyms that Thistle Hotels opened, and it was their flagship gym in Brands Hatch, £1 million gym. And I became kind of like gym manager, although when I say gym manager, there was only like 2 other people that worked in the gym, and again, it's more of a title than it was the actual responsibility. And so again, really great facility, learned loads there, learned everything from pool plant operation, all that stuff. And then whilst I was there, still playing my rugby, unfortunately, I completely blew my knee out. And so I had to have it completely rebuilt. And so I had a whole month off work whilst that happened, because back then knee reconstructions weren't as effective or as quick as they are now. So I had a month off work, and in that month off work, I decided to go to move around. I went back to my old athletics group and just do a bit of coaching and help out, and just to get a bit of fresh air, as it were. And one of the guys there, a guy called John Squill, was he was the regional manager for a company called Concept Personal Training, who had the contract for Holmes Place Health Clubs. And he said to me, Adam, we've got a new club opening in Nottingham, or Holmes Place got a new club in Notting Hill opening. Would you be interested in personal training there? He said, I can't promise you the job. You've got to do the interview, etc. However, if you're interested in personal training, I'll get you the interview. And I was like, doing this gym manager, I really loved it, and also felt really bad. I was off sick on full pay, and there's me going for another job, as it were. However, long story short, took the role as personal trainer at Notting Hill, Holmes Place, and that's how I got into personal training. It's just through a friend of mine going, do you fancy a bit of PT? Didn't really know where it was going to take me, so I went to Notting Hill, very quickly built up a 30-hour-a-week client base. And from there, Concept then lost the contract to Holmes Place, and Holmes Place took it over themselves.
Yeah, I remember.
And at that time, they said to me, would you like to run the PT? It's a typical chain mentality. You're a good PT. You've got a busy diary. Let's make you manager. Now, fortunately, I was actually not bad at that stuff. However, it doesn't always work out, as you know, Rach. It's because you're good at a PT, we're going to put you in a management role. So took on the management role, looking after the team of PTs there. did a good job. They then opened clubs in Spain and Portugal. So they asked me to set up their PT for their clubs in Spain and Portugal in particular. Spent a lot of time out there looking after or setting that up out there. And then sort of came, I guess, a little bit of a time in my career where the one time I had to really reflect and go, is this what I'm about? Because Holmes Place were changing the direction of their personal training model. So at that time, the team I was working with and looking after, I mean, I was only 24-ish. It was all about obviously having clients for multiple months, years, and building that relationship and serving their needs. And Holmes Place were like, you know what, we're going to change that model. We want high turnover, short time frames. So we want you to sign somebody up for 6 weeks, give them a program, get them going, and then sign somebody else up and just have this constant churn of PT. And I didn't agree with that. I said, to me, I was still young in the PT industry. In fact, PT was still a very young industry.
Really was, yeah.
However, I was just like, you know what? That doesn't make sense to me. For retention, for relationship building, for attaining goals, 6 weeks isn't long enough. And I said, I can't do that. I said, it doesn't sit right with me. And they said, well, you can still have all your clients and do what you do. Just teach everyone else. It's a 6-week program. I was like, I can't do that. So I handed my notice in. And fortunately, and I reckon you might know this person I'm about to mention now. Fortunately, a PT studio opened a 3-minute walk from Holmes Place, Notting Hill. And it was pretty much one of the first sort of PT studios in London. And it was owned by a guy called Liston Wingate Dennis. I think you ever come across Liston?
Yes.
Do you know the name?
Yes.
So he was sort of, he'd opened this studio. It was in a warehousey, unity type thing, literally 3 minutes walk. Took all my clients there. And because of that, Holmes Place changed all their PT contracts because they actually tried to sue me.
Whoa.
For soliciting clients. Although we had no contract, so I couldn't. No one had ever done it.
You've done it before.
30 hours a week of PT, plus obviously most of the members of my clients cancelled the memberships. And obviously you then got to think of the secondary spend, food, sunbeds, all the changes had sunbeds back then, sunbeds, creche. And I actually figured all the math out. And it was about £15,000 a month they lost when I took on my clients. And because I built such a strong relationship with my clients were getting results. I just said, look, I'm moving over there. It's up to you whether you come or not. And they all came. And so Holmes Place changed their whole PT contract pretty much because of that. And so, so I kind of then moved into the world of self-employment at the age of 24, 25, which back then was not commonly done. And my parents were both like, they've been employed all their life. And they're like, are you sure you want to do this? Self-employed is a very scary place to go. And I'm like, no, it's definitely where I want to go. I'm in control, do what I want, all the reasons you can imagine. And so, just began PT, continued my PTing out of the studio and kind of just built my business from there. And I mean, I was very fortunate. I managed my business. So I can say as a personal trainer, bearing in mind I still do PT, I've never worked or never PT'd in an evening or a weekend. And yet I've always, when I was full-time, I'd do 30 hours a week of PT.
That's
so
fantastic.
Very good at managing my clients. So when I have those conversations and coaching PTs and they say to me, Adam, I've got to work 15-hour days to get my clients in. I'm like, you don't. You just need to be smart on how you get your clients and how you position who you are and what you do. I'm a big believer in that. I'm sure we can talk about that later if you want. So PT there, whilst I was there, just doing my thing. And this is where a lot of my stories that you heard about the last few weeks. I very quickly got a reputation in the area, became without sounding egotistical.
Come on, say it.
A go-to person for the celebrities and the
Notting Hill gang,
rich and famous. So on my books, I had supermodels, I had actors, I had TV personalities, I had pop stars, and I was very, very fortunate. It's a very it's a brilliant. I'm like mid-20s and I'm working in Notting Hill and all these amazing people. And it was absolutely amazing. I was getting invites to parties and members clubs when members clubs didn't really exist and all sorts of amazing things. So it's a brilliant experience. And then I started to realize that actually is this what I really want to do? Do I want to live the rest of my life kind of in a world that doesn't really exist for me. Whilst I was very privileged to be invited into it, it wasn't what I was. I mean, when clients were coming to me, I'll share a couple of stories. These were kind of the breaking points for me, or tipping points. One client, when she's standing there, her husband had been made redundant that year, and they were having to they had to cut their budget on their holiday. And she's like, "Oh, Adam, we just want to go to South of France for 2 weeks. We got, obviously, they had 2 kids. We can't find anywhere to stay. We can't find a holiday." And I went, "What's your budget?" And she went, 42. I went, £42,000. She went, "Yeah, for 2 weeks." I said, "You can't find anywhere to stay." I went, "Right." I said, "How much would you normally spend?" And she went, 60,000.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like,
so we are a top level.
I'm like, do I really want to be in this world? It just didn't sit right with me. And again, similar conversations when clients are saying, "Oh, we're thinking of downsizing our house to don't say downsizing a house. We've got about a 3 or 4 budget." You and I might think 300 or 400,000. They're talking 3 or 4 million. And I just found myself in this world that wasn't me. And so I made a choice in my late 20s, early 30s that actually, whilst this had allowed me an amazing amount of privilege and met some amazing people that a lot of people would never be around, and had some amazing experiences, that actually there was more to life than serving the needs of the rich, the famous, and the privileged people. And that's when I decided to relocate my business closer to home and start to build my business and actually work with people that really did want to make changes in their life. So to give you an example, you'd work with, so I work with Boyzone, for example, and Stephen Gately in particular, and the contracts I had to sign weren't because he wanted to train, it was because his record label told him he had to train. So do you think he was doing any of his training? No. So I'd meet them a couple of times a month, give them programs, take them through everything. There was no accountability. They didn't want to do it. They were doing it. And the record label were paying as well. So it wasn't even like they were paying. And there was just no sense of want or wanting to change. And for me as a coach, as a PT, all I want to do is work with people who want to create change in their life. It's as simple as that. And when I was working with people who just had so much money that they didn't really care about the end goal, they were doing it just the thing to do, or they thought it was the right thing to do, then that wasn't serving me as a person, as a human being.
That's interesting.
And, I mean, I sat quite a lot of clients in Notting Hill.
I think it's fascinating. I think absolutely fascinating story. So how did that fuel you then for want to go more into education from your beginnings as doing everything at the Lido, which I imagine was brilliant, and I would imagine those days were fantastic. I bet you look back on them fondly. To then working for Homes Place, and I worked for Homes Place as well when they opened in Nottingham. And I loved working for Homes Place. I found them really professional organisation. Everything, attention to detail. And I was quite sad actually when Virgin took over, and I went then across to work for Virgin. I really did enjoy Homes Place. I thought they set a very high standard across the industry that lots of other operators aspired to be like. I always found them such a good company to work for. For you to go to Notting Hill, experience all that, and then go back to your roots, really, I suppose.
Yeah.
So when did you decide to make the jump into education and instructor education, PT education?
I think, again, it came by chance, and you and I have spoken about this a lot, by sort of our networks and collaboration, saying yes to lots of things, and that's how it sort of happened. So my first, whilst I was in Nottingham as well, something that kind of opened my mind to doing things differently was I was ended up doing the strength and conditioning so rugby had just gone professional, and they had, obviously there's super fit rugby players. However, the referees hadn't quite gone professional. So you had these 30 to 40-year-old men trying to keep up with these 22-year-old super fit athletes. So I was very lucky. I got approached by England Rugby to work with their professional referees. So that was my first sort of step away from working in Notting Hill, was working for England Rugby, which is, again, amazing privilege. And that's when I started to realise that actually, if I wanted to make a change within the industry, because I realised that the industry was full of lots of, like I say, virgins who were doing some great stuff. However, I felt I could have a bigger impact with what I'd learned. So, and the England Rugby was the first step to that, because they were teaching me so much. I was thinking, well, if I can learn from these amazing people, how can I pass that knowledge on somehow? Mm-hmm. And through my rugby connections, a friend of mine, his friend was working at FitPro. So you're one of your old companies. I think do you still have a relationship? I think you do, don't you?
Yeah. Still, yeah.
So a friend of mine that I played rugby with, his friend was working at FitPro, and they were looking for someone to deliver a brand new program called 10-Minute Gym.
Oh, yes, 10-Minute Gym, yeah.
There you go. So, and he basically said, would I be interested? I said, yes. So my name got put into the hat. I went through a little interview with, I'm sure you remember Nick Jarvis.
Of course.
So Nick kind of grilled me it was actually a whole day's worth of interviews and delivery and everything else that goes with it, with that sort of style. And Nick was like, yeah, I think I can't remember what his words were. I think he said something like, my initial delivery was awful, yet he thought I had potential. Something like, I'd never taken anyone to teach. And so him and a guy called Jeff Willoughby, who you may or may not have come across.
I don't know Jeff, no.
So Jeff was he's actually back in New Zealand, very, very good personal trainer. Him and Nick had kind of put 10-Minute Gym together. And that's how I got into education initially, was actually through behavior change. So going back to my Notting Hill story, the reason I left was because the people I was working with weren't committed to changing their behaviors. They weren't passionate or wanting change in their life enough to make changes or sacrifices in their life. And so the whole 10-Minute Gym premise was all around ultimately helping people change their behaviors. It was very NLP driven. And that's what got me fascinated in education. And I just loved delivering that program. And to this day, I still believe it's one of the best programs I've delivered. And I still have random people who I don't remember messaging me on social media saying, hey, Adam, still remember those days at 10-Minute Gym. I still use the bridge model, and it's still the best course I've ever done. And I'm currently not secret. What's what I'm looking for here, Rachel? It's a special announcement, as it were, for the show. I'm currently working on my own version of a new 10.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's something I'm looking to launch this year.
Interesting. So then tell us about some of the brands that you've represented and you've worked with and programs that you've gone on to create and been instrumental in since 10-Minute Gym.
10-Minute Gym, which was really for primarily local authorities, although we worked with all the David Lloyd clubs. That wasn't really out there to the masses. You could only do it if you worked for a gym. So from that, I then got invited or shown Viper, and I came from a very traditional weightlifting background. So in my athletics days, I was taught to Olympic weightlift by the Olympic weightlifting coach at the time. Yeah. Very lucky with that. Rugby back in the day, or as it is now, was all about how much can you bench, how much can you squat, how much can you deadlift. So they said to me, Adam, we've got this new thing called a Viper. What do you think? I was like, the typical, it's not heavy enough.
I know.
And this is when obviously the likes of Marvin and Gav were there. And I was actually I was very privileged enough to spend some time with Michelle and a lot of time with Gavin and Marvin. And I was like, actually, this is a really cool piece of kit. And I really embraced it. And that's how I got into Viper. I was then delivering Viper, and then started to work quite closely with Michelle, and then ended up, I think my official title sort of before I left was the head of global education. So I was literally looking after the master training team around the world. I was helping create content. And it was just absolutely great, brilliant. I still use Viper to this day. Every one of my clients still has Vipers. I use Vipers in every session in some way, shape or form. I've got a full bag of Vipers, as it were, all the weights in my garage, in my gym.
Oh, I love
that. So into Viper, then just the association with PTA Global. So FitPro distributing PTA Global. I then got off the opportunity to work with the PTA Global, which 5 co-founders will be some familiar names to the people out there. Bobby Capuccio, who I'm hoping to get onto my clubhouse room soon.
Oh, I've been trying to invite him. I've sent him about 4 invites.
Oh, he's invited? Oh,
have you? He won't come on though, will he? You've got to get him on.
Oh, I told him to come onto Clubhouse. He's on there because of our conversations. I'm going to try and get him onto a room. So
put me on the panel when he comes. He's one of my favourite people in the world.
He's got a podcast, right?
Yeah, he sent me the thing to it. I've got to listen to it. Yeah, I've got to listen.
So Bobby's was a co-founder. Michelle DeCourt was a co-founder. Rodney Corn was a co-founder. Scott Hobson and Ian O'Dwyer. So if they're not household names, all worth a Google if you're listening in.
Oh, 100%.
And they are geniuses in the fitness world. However, maybe apart from Michelle, they're not particular, and even Michelle in the UK anyway, none of them are particularly well known. Yet I've learned that for me was a game changer. I just changed my approach to everything. I just learned so much, and they were so willing to give as well. So got involved with PTA Global, was faculty for sort of UK and Europe with them, and that was for a good few years. And then the only reason I stopped doing that was because I opened my own gym. And so I basically stopped delivering education. So for those years, it was 10-minute gym, PTA Global, Viper. Loved it. I still have really fond memories, and I still use everything that I learned there in some way, shape, or form to this day. In fact, some of the PTA Global stuff that I learned and delivered in education, I now use in the corporate world when I'm doing stuff. So around behavior change and motivation interviewing. So really, really great stuff. So again, anyone wants to jump on the PTA Global qualification, still out there. It's really, really good stuff. So left FitPro and basically decided at the same time as opening a gym, decided to do an MBA as well. So MBA, open a gym, and that was then the next sort of chapter, I think. And I forget half the stuff that I've done. So that was the next chapter, open the gym. And then ultimately the plan was always to exit the gym as well. So exited the gym, sold it. And now I'm kind of on the next part of what I'm doing in my career. And I think that's the few other things I've not added in, but that's pretty much most of it.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm so inspired by the PTA Global. They were, Michelle, Bobby, Ian, were Scott Hobson, who I just was, we used to listen to them, watch them, and I was just so, they were so ahead of the time. Like you say, any of that material still stands up from when it was first introduced into the UK. I was just blown away by it. Their knowledge, their expertise, skill, intelligence, phenomenal.
And their kindness.
Yeah, very, very lovely.
Will just give as much time needed to whoever it was. Not a question. And that's always what shone through, was their humility and their compassion. Forget their brains. That was just a given. It was just their humility and their compassion for me. And like you say, Rach, it was ahead of their time. So I'm currently doing a master's in coaching and behavior change. And the next module, so we're doing a lot of neuroscience stuff at the moment. The next module, we're talking about motivation interviewing. It's a core component of a master's degree. They were teaching motivation interviewing 12 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
In a level 3 PT qualification.
Amazing.
That's how ahead of the game they were.
So phenomenal. I mean, Bobby Cappuccio, I mean, there is no words. I'll have to send him this podcast. He'll love it. Such a special individual with just amazing knowledge, expertise. Love him dearly. So that's, what a journey.
We've actually had a bit of a conversation, Bobby, in the last few weeks talking about his podcast, actually. So, yeah. So I'm in touch with him.
He sent me his podcast and I've got to listen to it. Oh,
Which one?
The first one, I think. The first one.
So the first one I listened to, I'd never heard of the woman he's interviewed, but she's an amazing person based on the interview and what I've seen. However, he also, I think his second one was with Ian O'Dwyer.
Oh, I'm going to listen to those after this.
Brilliant. That was they talked a lot about the biosocial dynamics of decision making.
Oh, I'm going to listen to that. Amazing. Lots of OGs who watch me and listen to my podcast and will know Bobby Cappuccio from FitPro days and will have attended his lectures. So that's awesome. Oh, what an interesting career path. So bring us up to date now. Well, as we are recording this podcast today, it is the day that the UK, an anniversary that the UK went into lockdown, which is bizarre. So going forward, where are you? What are you doing at the moment? And how are you want to take all of this amazing knowledge and expertise that you've gained over the last 25 years? What are you doing with it? What's next?
Love it. Great question. I think for me now, it's really, like I say, taking everything I've learned over the last 25 years from some amazing people I've worked with and been taught by, and just really passing that knowledge on. That's my next steps for me. So it's about creating education and program that is my education and programming. So I'm still involved with What Bike, I'm still involved with MyZone. However, for me, it's about establishing the Adam Daniel brand, if you like. So many years, I've helped, supported, and waved the flag for many brands. And I think now that time has come for me to start waving my own flag and creating some content and some education for fitness professionals that, for me, my passion is really about changing behaviors. It's about positive habits for the future. Yes, I love all the exercise and all the techniques that go with that. However, there's some amazing people doing that stuff out there. I think as an industry, that the area we haven't still truly touched upon is this idea of proper coaching and behavior change. And I truly believe that post-pandemic, we need to have the skills to work with people more effectively, because people are going to be much more aware that they want to improve health, not just fitness. They want to improve health. And some of them will be scared, some of them will be timid, some of them will be nervous. And how we deal and communicate with those people will affect their ability to change. So for me, my focus moving forward is it's about creating education and content around coaching and helping people change behaviors effectively, because we talk about it as a soft skill. I think we're doing a disservice. At the end of the day, and I'm sure you have maybe interviewed people in your time in terms of for job roles with masters and maybe even doctorates who have amazing technical knowledge, yet they can't communicate how to talk to someone. So for me, before we get onto that really cool stuff of the exercising and the programming for exercise and all the variants of that, if we can't communicate effectively and efficiently and make someone feel psychologically safe, the other stuff doesn't matter. So that's kind of, for me, the next steps.
I love that. And how do you envisage this all coming together, Adam? Do you see it as do you see yourself going back face to face? Do you see it online? Is it predominantly personal trainers, or is it anyone within the fitness industry everyone can definitely benefit, all coaches, but is there a particular audience that you have in mind for your content?
Had you have asked me this a year ago yesterday, the answer would be very different to a year ago today.
Okay.
In the sense, or not a year ago today, maybe 6 months ago. So whereas, for example, you certainly led the way in Group X in terms of social media, online content for maybe, I don't know how long, a decade, maybe longer. I didn't embrace online content. I haven't really embraced social media in my time for lots of reasons. I guess there was one that I didn't think I needed to. There was a sense of maybe a little bit of fear that I didn't really want to, well, not fear that I wouldn't do a good enough job. There was maybe a little bit of, actually, it doesn't particularly inspire me either. However, throughout lockdown, that perception has changed dramatically, like it probably has for a lot of people. Not because it's forced me to go online. I made a choice to take my clients online, and it's actually been really successful. Some of my clients train better online than they do. I've got one client in particular who trains better via video than he does face to face.
Interesting.
He's more focused. So he's a very creative individual, super successful. He's got an events company, basically, and works with some very high profile organizations, very creative. So when I'm seeing him face to face, he's looking over here, he's thinking about that over there, he's coming up with ideas. However, when we go onto video, he has to focus on what's in front of him, because if he doesn't know what's coming next.
Yeah.
So really interesting. It's helped me understand actually the benefits of online coaching. So, and also I've been running a lot of workshops, not so much for the fitness world, more for the corporate world throughout lockdown, with amazing success, which has really surprised me, because I really wasn't convinced about online coaching prior to the lockdown. So whilst it hasn't forced me, because I did choose to take stuff online, it certainly opened my mind to the benefits and the opportunities that online coaching has. So in answer to your question, where's it going to be? It will be a blend. It'll be a bit of both. I will have online programs. I will do face-to-face stuff, because probably like yourself, Rachel, I love being in front of people. I love the energy you get off of a room. And again, reading the room as well. Someone asking a question on Zoom is very different to someone asking you a question face-to-face. So for me, it's very much going to be a bit of both. I'm embracing social media much more these days. So lockdown, Instagram, I made a commitment. And in fact, it's interesting. So at the start of lockdown, so coming up to a year ago, I did this. I actually started almost like a little support group for fitness professionals. So it's only within my network, so it wasn't particularly large. So we've got about 35 people in it now, all kind of educators, successful personal trainers, or maybe small business owners or small gym owners. And I just put all these people together And literally we'd meet every week for an hour and a half, a little bit of mental health check-in, check everyone's doing okay, a little bit of positivity stuff. And then I'd bring a guest speaker in. So for example, Bobby spoke, Pete Cohen spoke, and various other people. And we had someone come in doing a lot of social media for us. And at that point I got put on the spot and I made a commitment to post every day on Instagram for 6 months.
And have you done it?
I did do that. And now I now post pretty much, I would say 4 to 5 times a week, maybe 6, but I did it every day for about 6 months. And don't get me wrong, my following wasn't particularly big in the first place. It still isn't particularly big. However, it grew consistently in size and started actually to get engagement. And it was really, really cool. So I've seen the benefits of that, and I'm going to keep doing that and then start to share, I guess, my thoughts, what's going on in my head, which is sometimes a bit scary. And and so, yeah, so for me, lockdown has allowed me and encouraged me to embrace online platforms and social media much more.
Oh, that's good to hear. I'm really good. And the communication is so different. Yeah, I've just been up to my local gym, and they've got a lovely big outside area. We've got heaters up. We're all so excited to get back in front of people. I've loved the lockdown. I've loved the business has grown. I've enjoyed developing lots of new programs and products and services and all that good stuff. But get me in front of 18 people from around my area. I'm so excited, Adam. I can't tell you. I mean, just so excited.
It goes back to your question at the start. What's your why?
Yeah.
Why? So again, my why at the start was a bit hazy. However, my why is very clear now. I imagine your why is very clear. So for me, it's ultimately getting in front of people and just helping people change and move forwards to whatever that might mean to them. And there's nothing better than seeing a room of 25, 100, 200 people just sitting there going, this is cool. I get this. This is going to help me move forwards, however that might be. And that's just that feeling inside as a coach, educator, teacher, whatever it is, the role you might have or call yourself. That's why we do what we do, to help other people and to have that sense of, you know what, I've done good today.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Now, the one reason I've not really been on Clubhouse as in on a panel this week, because every time we go on in a fitness room, this question is asked all of us, and I've answered it so many times. I think you have, but I've got to do it for the podcast. Go on. So what do you think's next? How do you think? Every time we go, and in fact, I've just listened to, who have I listened to? I listened to Steve Owen's podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you were in that room. And again, they were discussing what's going to happen next. So as we are opening, I'm doing outdoor sessions next week. Gym's open the following week. Group X, fingers crossed, indoors, potentially may come back end of May, June. What's your thoughts? How do you think the professional fitness industry is going to come out of this lockdown, as in the education side, conventions? How do you think it's going to look in the next few months?
I actually had a very similar conversation with Wattbike the other day about education, how it's going to come back. And the actual answer, which is a really simple answer, is we don't know.
No.
We don't. We can often make assumptions and guesses based upon what we think. Yet this is obviously we can't look back in history and go, right, when has the country closed down for a year and what happened last time? We would have been here. We don't know what's going to happen. So any suggestions anyone makes is pure assumption and guesswork. Is my first thing. So that's just a little caveat to cover myself for whatever I say next.
Good.
I think education, is going to be. I think people have embraced online education throughout lockdown, which has been brilliant. You said your business has thrived throughout. So we know education online has been brilliant. However, the reality is that there's going to be a lot of Group X, a lot of PTs, a lot of fitness professionals who maybe haven't earned as much money as they normally do over the last year. Some have thrived and done really well, which is brilliant. I might suggest the majority have probably got by. And so I think for a lot of people initially, and also for businesses, the first port of call is get some money back in the bank, which probably means education will be a little bit slower to recover. That would be my initial answer to your question. So for me personally, in being, obviously I deliver education for My Zone and Wattbike still, I still think that for the majority of organizations, it's going to be towards the back end of this year before we get back into delivering education. Saying that, I know the likes friends who work for some of the kit companies like your matrices of this world, they're back delivering education already because some facilities have obviously upgraded kit. And that's the other thing, is that some facilities have taken those bounce back loans and said, okay, let's upgrade our kit, which has given some education here and there. So I do think as a whole, education will be the slower side of things within the fitness industry to come back up to speed, purely because a lot of people will be focusing on getting some money back in the bank and making up for some lost earnings over the last year. I think at the same time, though, I do think people have probably got a new appreciation for education. And my hope is that with that habit they've created over lockdown, with learning more stuff, that will continue and the education will keep thriving, because I do think education in the fitness industry probably isn't as well accepted, is probably the wrong word. I don't think enough Group X, PTs, fitness professionals upskill themselves as often as they should, is my opinion.
Right. Yeah.
So I would like to think that because they've probably been on more courses throughout lockdown, that will keep that going throughout, is my hope. I think education is going to have to evolve. I think we'll see a lot more of face-to-face and blended education. I'm not a fan of it. We use this word hybrid a lot in our industry. I'm not a huge fan of hybrid. To me, hybrid's more like a compromise.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in compromises. I think a compromise means no one really wins.
Yeah.
So I think we need to find a platform that works for both people. So is it a bit blended? Is it just face-to-face? And I think as coaches, educators, PTs, Group X, I think you also need to decide what it is you want to do. So coming away from education a bit, I think with your business, decide, are you going to go back to face-to-face full time? If so, do it really well. Are you going to focus on online? If so, do it really well. Are you going to do blended? Great. Yet make sure you do things both as well as each other, and don't do a little bit of this and a little bit of that where you end up with a diluted product. That's also my fear from a business perspective, whether it's a large organization or a independent person, sole trader. I think people are going to think, I have to do everything. People now want everything, and it'll get diluted. The quality will come down, and you might end up losing clients. So a little bit of advice would be, decide what you want to focus on. Is it face-to-face, blended, whatever? And just make sure your standards are exceptionally high on whatever it is you do. Don't dilute it. So I think, has that answered all your questions, Rachel?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, totally.
Yes.
So if anybody wants to find out more, we know you're on Instagram. Is that your platform that you enjoy the most, or where do you hang out online?
Yeah, where do I hang out online? I think it's probably at the moment, although Clubhouse is probably the platform I prefer the most.
Yes.
It's great conversation. And yeah, it's just really enjoyable, and we get to reconnect with people maybe you've not spoken to for a while. However, obviously that's not really a place to connect as such. So Instagram is most definitely my favorite place. I am on Facebook, where I don't really engage a huge amount on Facebook. I still haven't got my head around it. I need some lessons off you, I think. On Facebook. And if you are on LinkedIn at all, which is a less fitnessy platform, however, I'm reasonably active on LinkedIn as well. So on both LinkedIn and on Instagram, it's Adam Daniel MBA. And I'd love to see you on there. And yeah, just fire any questions you might have onto either platform.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for the time today. It was a lovely chat with you. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah.